YouTube family, how has everybody been? Hope y'all have been good. I've taken a little break from YouTube because I had two family members fall very ill, and it's a difficult time for me, but I am pushing through. And today I wanted to show up here on YouTube. I'm in the middle of a move. I did find my Yeti microphone, but I couldn't find my cord, so we're just using the built-in mic today, and I hope the sound is not too muffled. I'm gonna use my app that amplifies the sound, and hopefully that works out. And please remember, if it's too low, just put your sound to the max. This is the best I can do at this moment. Alright, so I have not reviewed Kiely Rodni's Autopsy in months at this point, and it's been exactly 5 months actually, and there's no better time than right now to revisit it, even though I'm propped up on boxes here, but that's okay. So today we are going to have a continued brief study of Kiely Rodni's Autopsy, and we are going to just move ahead from the spot where I stopped after my 2 videos reviewing her autopsy. And if you haven't seen those 2 videos, I will link them so you can go back. I will link them in the description so you can go back and rewatch those as a bit of a foundation or background. Or you could also watch this video independently because it's talking about information that's not been really presented anywhere else so far because I haven't talked about it, but here I am. And we are going to talk about the left wrist of Kiely's body because there was a split wound, roughly 2 inches by ½ inch on her left wrist. There was Kiely's hardware detected in there that she was supposed to have, that she had allegedly from her fall. I mean, we don't know the details of how she sustained that injury, but we do know that there was hardware in Kiely's wrist. And we are also going to discuss the skeletal injury that was discovered by the pathologist during Kiely's autopsy. And her pathologist was Dr. Reber. And now let's move on to this slide. It does look overwhelming, but slowly and surely we're going to make it through it. I promise. Please stay with me. So we're going to start reading and I'll explain everything in very clear basic terms. So the upper extremities, so hands and arms, lower extremities, legs. The upper and lower extremities, which means arms and legs, are symmetrical, so they are same on both sides, normally developed, show no apparent external trauma, so no signs of trauma from the outside. An area of postmortem, and mortem means death, post means after, so after death change on the left wrist at the radial side, and this is right here when where I'm showing with my arrow, is about 4.5 centimeters per 1.5 centimeters. And let's convert that to inches so we can all understand. That's 1.8 inches per 0.6 inches. So that's a pretty large wound, 1.8 inches long and 0.6 inches wide. An opening, a wound. We could call it a laceration, which just means a cut or an opening, just a fancy word. Where there is splitting, so literal splitting of the exposed dermis, which means a layer of the skin, which exposes underlying soft tissue. So the skin is split and we can see the tissue underneath. The margins, just the limits of the edges, like the margins, the edges of this area are smooth, and the area is consistent with dehiscence, and Okay, so imagine you know the word glue, you know the word adhesive, so that's something that glues together, and then dehiscent, so adhesive, dehiscent is the opposite meaning. So if adhesive glues things together, then adhesive means ungluing, opening, splitting, bursting open of a wound. And here we see the splitting open of a surgical scar. So one more time, an area of after death change on the left wrist is this side that I'm showing right here, where you can see a red line, and it is about 1.8 per 0.6 inches, where there is splitting of the exposed skin, which exposes underlying tissue, and the edges of this area are smooth, and the area is consistent with splitting or opening or bursting open of a surgical scar. There is no discoloration in that area that would suggest ante, so it's like antes, before mortem, death, before death, hemorrhage. And hemorrhage just means internal or external bleeding. So there's no discoloration that could suggest that there was a bleeding before death, they're saying here. So it's not like the wound was split open and then the body was deceased. This rather indicates the splitting after the body was deceased. But there's going to be interesting details to it as we go ahead, so please stick here with me. I promise not to keep it too sciencey. I'm doing my best. Epidermis from both hands has been previously lost from decomposition. So the skin from both hands has been previously lost, or it's like flaked off or sloughed off from decomposition together with the fingernails. The toenails have also separated with the macerated, which means softened by soaking, and sloughed plantar, which means sole of the foot, skin from both feet. So the skin from hands and feet has been sloughed off. Kiely's back is symmetrical, and the spine is palpably, which means by touching. So we can touch her spine, touch her back, and it is stable in the midline. There's no visible trauma on the back. And we are reading from the external examination, which is page 3 of the autopsy, which is kind of where we stopped the last time. And I'm reading from lines 88 to 106 because they caught my attention today. Okay, so let's carry on. Next point is scars and identifying marks. A small stippled tattoo of the number 17 is on the lateral right hip, and we do know that everyone who was searching for Kiely was informed that she had that tattoo on her ribs, not her hip, but that's been widely discussed. Right? Let's just remember about that, the misplaced tattoo. And tattoos are one part of possible identification during autopsy. So we have a misplacement of the tattoo here, whatever that means, right? And there is a vaguely defined longitudinal, which means vertical, linear, surgical scar. So it's a vertical scar on the ventral, which means like this side of the arm that you see right here, or inner side of the left wrist. So they are saying that, please pay attention, because in this paragraph they are saying that the scar has burst open, but in the next paragraph they are naming it a vaguely defined scar, which is a contradiction to me personally, because either it's split half-inch open or it's vaguely defined. It's either or, but that's just my point of view. postmortem, which means after death, radiographic, so probably x-rays. Scan demonstrates an orthopedic plate and multiple screws in the distal left radius. And let's revisit that real quick. Because they revisit this subject in Kiely's internal examination on page 5, lines 174 through 177. So they cover this area twice, in the external examination, page 3, and the internal examination, page 5. All right, so when they're looking from the outside of the body, they are seeing an orthopedic plate with multiple screws. Okay, and they point the same thing in the internal examination. So no acute skeletal injury is found on gross and radiographic examination. So no skeletal injury is found on the x-ray. Dissection of the left wrist. This is the part that interests me, because if we refer to this slide again, the scar is split open in the first paragraph. Second paragraph describes it as vaguely defined. And then during the internal examination, they dissect or cut it open again, which, of course, every pathologist will follow their own state protocol, but it's just interesting to me that, so which one is it? Was it open? Was it closed and vaguely seen? Did you have to make an extra cut that you're describing here? Dissection of the left wrist. So which one is it? I'm just personally confused. If someone can help me make sense, please, I am open to all feedback. I'm very interested in this topic, obviously, with all our victims. So the dissection or the cutting open of the left wrist confirms the presence of orthopedic hardware attached to the ventral surface of the distal radius. And this sounds so convoluted. I'm going to break it down term by term. So orthopedic hardware. See, you can see it right here, and you can see that my letters are reversed. It's because anatomy pictures for some reason favor the right hand and the right side of the body, but we're discussing the left side of the body. So Kiely's orthopedic hardware was located right here on the inner, outer side of her wrist. Next, orthopedic hardware attached to the ventral surface. So this is the ventral or inner surface, and this is the dorsal or the back surface of your arm that you see if you kind of put your hand like palm down. That's the dorsal side or the dorsal surface. And now if you place your hands palms up, that you see the ventral side, right? The inner side of your arms where we can see all the little veins, right? So the orthopedic hardware was attached to the ventral surface of the distal radius. And right here, you can see exactly where the radius is. It's this bigger bone in your wrist. So the inner bone is ulna and the outer bone is radius. So distal, which means away from the body. So she didn't break it towards her elbow, right? She broke it towards the palm of her hand, which means distal, away from the center or the midline of the body. Consisting of, so the orthopedic hardware consists of a stainless steel 2-column, and right here you can see the 2 columns. So one is right here and one is right here, compared to the 1-column plate, which we can see right here, which allows for a smaller range of motion. Here we see a 2-column volar plate held in place by multiple screws. And you can see the screws here. And isn't it cool how surgery and science have gone ahead and invented all these cool tools for us to reconstruct our bodies after accidents. So volar plate just means a metallic device. You can see it on both pictures here, and it allows for the return of motion, of range of motion after the operation. So after the injury and after the surgery, you can attach this device and kind of gradually help the bone heal. And why I highlight the word gradually is that if we revisit this slide, which is not friendly to any of us, I look at it and I'm overwhelmed myself. Please stay with me. But let's look at this. Returning to the external examination and the external evidence of injury. And then we're going to jump back into the internal. So stay with me. It's all moving very linearly. Listen carefully. I'll explain it in simple terms. The pathologist is saying that there's no apparent, blunt, or penetrating injuries seen externally. Post-mortem, so after death, radiographic X-ray scan of the whole body demonstrates no evidence of acute skeletal trauma. And that part is interesting to me because 6 to 9 years after surgery is the minimal timing required for the completion of bone remodeling. So it just means that it takes at least 6 years for the bone to reshape, regrow, readjust into its natural or original position. But in Kiely's case, they are saying that there's no evidence of skeletal trauma, which to me personally is contradictory because once again, I personally, from my experience, I think and I know and I've studied that it takes time and it takes years for the bone to look similar to what it looked like pre-injury, and oftentimes people carry those injuries with them for the rest of their lives, and even after their death you can identify the bones that it's like the wear and tear of the bones that were broken, fractured throughout the lifetime. So they're saying in this autopsy that Kiely had this miraculous healing with no evidence of skeletal trauma. And I know they might mean that it hasn't happened like acutely or lately or shortly before her death, but still it's an identifying factor that there would be remnants, or leftovers of that injury, right? At least in my logic and in the medical science that I've been exposed to. Okay, I also wanted to mention that this type of injury is most commonly caused by falling onto the back of the hand. So falling on the palm of the hand, either falling forward or backward or sideways, to the left side, and like landing on the palm of the hand. So that's a serious injury, and here we are saying that it healed. There's no evidence of it having ever happened. And another point I kind of wanted to highlight here is that in pediatrics, so we're talking children's health care, if the part of the bone does not heal properly after the fracture, if it doesn't heal properly after it's broken, the bone may grow at an angle or more slowly than the other bones in the body. And you as adults might know that if you broke a bone in your childhood or teenagehood, that area of the body might look different from the rest of your body sometimes, right? And the impact of the bone's growth may not be visible for a year or more after the injury. And these fractures must be followed carefully by the pediatrician for 12 to 18 months to make sure no growth damage has occurred. And why they are talking about it is that the human body definitely grows, especially at Kiely's age of 17. She was still growing, so it made that area extra vulnerable to healing incorrectly because the size is changing. And yet, despite the severity of her injury, despite the need of the hardware, despite her age, and despite the fact that the bones were growing, we see no evidence of skeletal injury in that area according to the autopsy, which is odd to me personally. And then just lastly, I wanted to address, I'm sure there's going to be those of you in the comments, who are educated in the medical science, who are going to point out that, of course, this splitting, this opening or bursting open of the wound might be obviously caused by bloating of Kiely's body and swelling. Right? So the body was bloated, it was swollen, there was tissue breakdown, gas formation, and it all caused the wound to rupture, right? But I don't disagree with you, like that is what the literature said. However, you guys tell me, can a bloated, swollen body of a drowning victim weigh 103 pounds? If her height was 66 inches and her weight when she went missing was declared as 115 pounds, roughly. And according to her picture, she was not anorexic. So of course it's possible that someone is taller and they are lighter, but still, for a bloated and swollen body that has rupturing, opening scars, 103 pounds is awfully lightweight, because I am roughly 62 inches tall and I weigh 120 pounds, and I'm considered on the lighter side. I'm considered rather like skinny or in shape or whatever. So for someone being 66 inches tall and weighing 103 pounds in their bloated, swollen state causing scar bursting, that does not make sense to me personally. Please let me know what you guys think in the comment. Please let me know if you have any questions, if I can address or answer anything. And please take good care of yourselves, of your health, sleep plenty, eat your fruits and veggies, go out for a walk, go out to the water if you can, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Bye.